Hello again. I have a great panel here with you. I'm Dianna Dilworth again, Executive Editor at Brand Innovators. I'm excited to talk about media marketing and commerce. We're going to get into it with these great leaders. So I'm just going to start by asking you guys to introduce yourselves going down the line. We'll start with you, Nili.
Hey, great. Hi, I'm Nili Klenoff, and I am the Global Head of Mastercard Commerce Media. Great to be here.
Good afternoon, Brian Monahan. I lead the Albertsons Media Collective. Albertsons is a grocery chain in the United States, 22 different banners, 2,500 stores across the country.
We love Albertsons. Lisa Valentino, President of Best Buy Ads. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. So commerce media is where strategy, trust, and growth intersect. And as media, marketing, and commerce converge, the old rules about who captures attention, who owns the customer, and who monetizes outcomes no longer apply. So can we talk first about, to frame the discussion today, let's talk about what part of traditional media and marketing value chain is losing power fastest and who's gaining it in the commerce media world?
I'm happy to start. Look, I think, in the past, it was all about trading on impressions. And I think, given the pressure that advertisers are under, they're facing, reductions in budgets, there's pressure to prove ROI. I think what we're seeing is this shift in marketing from attention to intent, right? And it's those outcomes that are becoming so critical. And I think what we're seeing, and I'm sure my panelists are seeing the same thing, is that it's really about quality over quantity, right? The dollars are really shifting to the environments, the channels where the behavior is proof.
Yeah, I would build on your point, Nili, that the value equation is shifting from the attention to the behavior. And Dianna, you could convince me that in the future, every ad transaction is going to go through some sort of commerce filter. I mean, we have that transaction signal. We have the ability to create targets. And most importantly, we have the ability to do closed loop measurement. And as media buying becomes increasingly agentic, you need that closed loop path. So I think if you are selling media just on impressions and attention, and you don't have that outcome signal, you're losing value.
Yeah, it's almost, it's not an either or, it's an and, really. I hope there's not winners and losers, there's just new players. Because so many of the partners that we work with today, I think about the NFL, I think about partners like Roku, they are part of our ecosystem. To Brian's point, wrapped with data that is super performant and differentiated. And we're creating a new paradigm. It's unfolding. There's quite a bit to still educate on because not everybody understands it. We have found clients are so leaned in right now because of the value that we're delivering in terms of performance, but it starts so far up the funnel. And so I hope there is just a new field of winners in the future.
Yeah. What do brands need to know to help facilitate this and push this forward?
We could go this way if you want now, if you want. So we're already a pretty large-scaled platform, so we're learning quite a bit. We've got hundreds of brands running through Best Buy Ads. We run thousands of campaigns every year, and so those that know us understand that the transaction-level data that Brian talks about is probably one of the richest, most performant data sets. And not only is it about ROAS or multi-touch attribution, it's the insights of the platform that are really informing. We know when our customers are ready for an upgrade. We know when they're bringing a new little person into their life because of some of the baby tech that they're buying for their household. So a lot of that informs the type of work that we're doing. I think what's interesting is for non-endemic categories, like we've had a lot of success with the entertainment category as of late because we are a disruptor. They've been going through the same door for years. Guess what? Best Buy customers, there are 60 million of them every year that come through our doors. They're heavy NFL fans, they're big moviegoers, they're big travelers, and so they purchase high-end products. So I think non-endemic brands are finding new doors. They have to disrupt. And so that's some of the success that we're finding at Best Buy.
I mean, plus one to Lisa's point about the insights we sit on. I think brands need to realize the data that we have is not just about optimizing for ROAS. Like Lisa said, like if you're buying a new home entertainment product, that's like an indicator of a lot that's going on in that household's life. And I think smart brands are starting to realize that you can capitalize on these insights to grow categories. Because a lot of what we do with retail media is we harvest the bottom of the funnel and we shift share. We're not actually bringing new people into the category. And that's where you need to start with an insight about what's happening in a household to introduce them to the category, to get them in and drive real growth, not just temporary share shift.
I will build on a couple of points that my fellow panelists made. You know, they talked a lot about insight. I would say that insights are the most powerful when they're rooted in outcomes. And at Mastercard, we obviously have a treasure trove of data. In 2025, we processed 175 billion transactions across our network.
Wow.
Yeah, so a big number. Yeah. And those are cross merchant category, those are cross geography, those are cross channel, and we're able to use those insights to both personalize content and then close the loop from an attribution standpoint, regardless of where the transaction took place, you know, whether it took place online or it took place in store. And we also do that through a proprietary card linking technology that we have that links the ad exposure to the sale. So there's a couple of pieces in that, you know, just functionally around the value of the attribution and the personalization, but it's this kind of closed loop framework, like a continuous feedback loop of the outcome powers the signal drives better outcomes, and that ultimately drives better results.
I mean, I think what's starting to happen, there would be a big debate if there were media platforms up here, but you used to have to own the content supply to run a media company. You really don't anymore. You need to have the data. You need to have the data that differentiates. But the growth of our businesses is all about curation. And the curation level allows us to take our data into streaming, social, digital out of home, publishing. And so as long as you have the right partnerships in place and the right technology, and that's an investment that all three of us are making, I can bring any content engagement platform to the table. And so so the data really becomes, and the performance and measurement, because that's really hard to curate. We're building that. That's a new playbook, right? Being able to do omni-channel attribution, really hard. We're just launching a scaled solution this year. But once you have that, you can apply it to any content out there pretty easily, right? And so it's a really interesting, shift that's happening in the business in terms of that, because clients are saying, well, wait a minute, I want to be able to apply this to premium streaming. Sure. I want to be able to bring this into a platform like Meta. Sure. And so your ceiling is not your owned and operated capacity. Your ceiling is limitless.
It's a very good point about attribution, which just has always been a marketer's challenge, is it the chicken or the egg, and where's it coming from? As these new monetization models are emerging, and we have transaction data, what differentiates the retailers and advertisers who are succeeding versus those who are struggling to scale?
I mean, the advertisers I think that are succeeding are doing more than just mining the bottom of the funnel to pick up share. So a good example is this sweet hat that I'm rocking. And so Rico's Tacos is a new branded entertainment show that we launched yesterday here at Cannes with Procter & Gamble. And it's a modern take on the soap opera. 20 episodes. It's a Southern California family, multi-generational family. They run a taco stand. Occasionally they have to go to the supermarket. Occasionally they have to buy some paper towels and some Tide and whatnot. But the whole thing was built on insights, right, about like where growth existed in the market and what some of the use cases are. Like, 3% or so of grocery trips in America are because you're cooking something and you forgot an ingredient. And so guess what? That's in one of our episodes. And so it's not just the insights that went into the content, it's kind of to what Lisa was saying, then the distribution of the content is running offsite in our app. And what's really exciting is now it's running in our stores. So we have these little, micro dramas like running subtitled in our stores with QR codes. And we're going to learn about content consumption. I think those are the brands that are winning, are trying to take these demand platforms and do more with them.
Yeah. Brian is talking about this intersection of performance and culture. And so we're all trading on culture. If you look at all of the moments where Best Buy drive times go way up, it's sports culture, it's entertainment culture. You think back to school, you think Super Bowl. Those are the moments when you're upgrading your technology. And so we enter brands like Best Buy, Albertsons, Mastercard. We can be in the storytelling business, and we have the permission of large swaths of audiences to do this kind of work. And so, I love going into a meeting and saying to a CMO, if I paint this picture and I present the platform of Best Buy through the lens of culture, and then I say, who am I talking about? It's a media company. And so it's really changing when you open the aperture to a platform like Best Buy or others through the lens of culture. The possibilities are unlimited.
I'll share maybe a slightly different lens, but it actually ties back, Lisa, to something you said earlier about being able to reach consumers and not being limited by your own supply. So I think we can all agree that there's just an explosion of channels out there right now, right? I mean, of course, your social, your digital, your mobile, retail media networks, you've got agentic, right? And, there's a need to meet the consumer where they are. And I think it's like the age-old question of, how do you reach your consumers? Who's ready to act? What's the best message? How do you have a cohesive view of the consumer that allows you to kind of influence and motivate and then measure the outcomes? And so, with what we're doing, we actually really don't, leverage any, we're not focused on own channels. That's not our kind of core business. It's actually about distributing through partner channels, right? But leveraging the data to be able to have that insight, right? Who is the consumer? Have they ever interacted with this brand before, or maybe they're a lapsed consumer and there's an opportunity to re-engage that consumer, but doing so in the environment where the consumer is interacting creates that native and really seamless experience that helps brands just with their meta objectives.
I love that. We talked a little bit about using these insights to drive culture. What does value creation look like in commerce media today?
Yeah, I'll start. I think for something to be valuable, it has to be additive to the consumer experience, right? And that looks different for different consumers. And again, kind of we'll tie it back to where is the consumer in the journey with, again, a given brand. Valuable in that moment could be just connection in a moment of like a touch point and engagement with the brand. It also might be some sort of incentive or discount. We grew up as a loyalty program. We were running a personalized card-linked offers business for 10 years, sourcing incentives and discounts from advertisers, personalizing them, and then distributing those to consumers. And so we're kind of now broadened that whole value proposition into this broader media and advertising network. But this concept of being able, at the right moment for the consumer, a well-timed incentive, to motivate them, that's really powerful. Yeah. And then the last I would say, again, because we grew up as a loyalty program, our focus is on creating value for every partner in the ecosystem, right? So value, of course, for the advertiser, helping meet their objectives and deliver measurable results. value for the consumer in the way that I just described, but also value and connection for the publisher, where, for example, you might be able to actually earn that incentive in the publisher's loyalty currency. Right? And so that's kind of a different flywheel. It's a flywheel of marketing, media, and advertising, but it's a true value and a mutual exchange of value.
Just to add, we're also in the experiences business. If you think about the businesses that we run, and one of the big things that I did not estimate accurately walking in the door at Best Buy was the demand for the in-store experience. I thought that was going to be the last thing that the market wanted from Best Buy ads. And it's unbelievable. And you look at it, and Brian, you have a similar situation. We have 1,000 stores across the country. We're now doing some of our biggest innovative work with brands like Meta and IKEA. And this week there's like 5 big ideas about brands wanting to create store-in-store experiences. How do I use your physical footprint as a launching off pad? And so when you think about value creation, it's how does that provide additive, incremental love, passion, and value back to the customer? I think we're in the beginning stages of what that actually looks like. The one thing I would say, we have a really cool program with Meta where we have a glassware showcase in our stores. And some of the early learnings that we're seeing is the in-store marketing that happens actually drives a tremendous amount of ROAS online. So it doesn't always, like intuitively, I would think it would drive more in-store sales volume. It actually drove more online sales volume. So there's lots of interesting insights to pick up and scale.
I have to touch on that. My favorite stat is that while most advertising is through digital channels, and this is an industry-wide stat, over 80% of transactions still take place in store. So being able to utilize those moments to connect with consumers, but then from an attribution standpoint, the ability to close that loop is so powerful. It goes back to the point of meet the consumer where they're engaging with the brand.
It's such a good point. Obviously, this sort of omni-channel has never been more important. You talked about experiential as sort of being in demand and growing. How are you using your commerce data to sort of help? It comes down to the insight? Like, how does this lead the campaigns, these efforts, whether it's micro dramas, whether it's the experiential? How are the brands that you're working with really like using this kind of data to help across channels? Because I don't think that every brand connects commerce media with their branding campaign or their experiential activations.
Well, I would just add, there's a lot that we have with the insights about why people shop and what that means about what's happening in their life, and like could lead to inspiration about a campaign. I think there's a lot that brands can learn as well from looking at what happened after the fact, and not just looking at ROAS or incremental ROAS, but looking at like new to category, lifetime value, basket analysis. Like there's a lot of things that you can see in the post-buy data that can also inform like how you think about creating the campaign to begin with.
Yeah, we're building really interesting tools. At some point, we'll talk about the fact that like we all have our own version of a tool. So, the standardization isn't there yet. It will come, and I think we will help drive that. But we have so many brands coming to us, first of all, further upstream, not what am I selling tomorrow, but here's what I want to accomplish for holiday. I know that now with our biggest brands. And the data allows us to inform things like media volume, media mix. If we know what your outcome is, and your outcome absolutely is a sales unit outcome, but there's other outcomes. We have the data drives the media plan, the optimization strategy, we make all of the creative, by the way. So we're also in the creative business because a lot of the creative that it goes back to personalization. It's not about, if we just through billions of ads of impressions on our site, we create our commerce business, which is why we're all here. And so that relevancy and that personalization is really, really important. But the data actually is, yes, it's insight to know, but it's actually insights that inform market share, things that CMOs and CEOs really care about.
When we sit down with brands, it always starts with the data, right? It starts with their objectives. What do they want to do? Right, so do they want to reach a new consumer? Do they want to engage a lapsed consumer? Do they want to lift average order values? Do they want to, improve margin? Whatever those objectives are, we are then leveraging the insights from the data to create the right audiences and the right kind of, campaign construct, so that when the campaigns execute across the network and, we have, consumers interacting across the channels where our platform is running, we're able to marry those two together. So that's kind of one aspect of how do you use the insight. And then the other is off of, the back end, of the campaign. So being able to, of course, close the loop from an attribution standpoint, but to really understand consumer behavior shifts. So what happened pre, during, post the transaction? How did that ultimately impact the consumer's long-term engagement with the brand? Also, what was the incrementality associated with that? Example I always like to give is, look, as a consumer, I may know that I'm hungry and I want to go out to a restaurant, and I may know that I want Italian food. But imagine a well-timed, well-placed ad with maybe an incentive associated with a particular restaurant, right? And I choose that. When we're able to kind of link that to the card in the way that we can truly prove back to the brand that they wouldn't have gotten this transaction otherwise, right? This was truly incremental. And so there's a lot of different ways that we're using the insights from the data, both at the upfront part of the campaign and the back end of the campaign. And I really love what Lisa said about how do you help them grow their business, right? It's not just at a campaign level, but it's what are your broader meta business needs and how can we leverage those insights to help you achieve those?
Trust is a very big issue with the fragmented media landscape, people not even knowing what's AI and what's not. Albertsons is a brand that people trust just in the sense that they buy their groceries there every week. I mean, of these businesses that we interact with regularly, we trust. So how are you thinking about framing your data in the lens of consumer trust so that brands can break through?
Yeah, I love this question about trust and how we can offer that to our partners. On one hand, trust for us is reflected in how we're trying to be really transparent with the data we provide. I mean, in many ways, we grade our own homework, so we want to provide real transparency to the methodological choices and allow our partners to change those if that's the way they want to see the results presented. But trust, I think there's another unlock of trust that we can offer. In the Albertsons chain, 11 of our banners have been around for over a century. We have literally fed families for generations. Safeway is called Safeway because it was launched in the Great Depression with a cash and carry business model when the prevailing way of buying groceries was on account and families were going into debt trying to feed the kids and losing the farm. Safeway was the safe way to buy groceries, right? So there's this rich equity that we have. I mean, Best Buy does, Mastercard does, surely. And that's another thing we could put on the table with our partners to earn trust with our shared end customer to drive growth.
Yes, and yes. I think consumer expectation is also present in that because our customers are not patient. They want the best. They want the best experience. They want the best customer experience. They want to be shown the next big, especially at Best Buy for sure. We're unboxing new product every day. And so this pairing of meeting customers where they are, their bar is really high. Their bar is really high. And when you don't hit that bar, you get punished for it. And so I just think both sides of that equation are important.
Yeah. Look, none of this works without trust. And the Mastercard brand is synonymous with trust, right? Like it is woven into everything we do, starting with our core network, right? How we protect the transactions, how we kind of govern the relationships, our data integrity standards, our security principles. We've taken all of that and those principles, and then we've extended them into our commerce media network, right? And so it's all about, protection of that data and, making sure that any AI is leveraging, the right ethical principles, by doing the right kind of bias testing, right? So it's just kind of engineered into how we create products, how we bring those products to market. And then we take that a step further in terms of the network that we're running, because it's a two-sided network. We have advertisers on one side, we have publishers on the other. And so every advertiser that we bring on is, of course, verified. Every publisher that we bring on is verified. So it just creates this, fully closed loop of trust.
Can you talk about how commerce media is now this primary touch point? How does it then get translated into an emotional branded experience? How can you build those connections?
I have.
You want to start, Lisa?
Yeah, I can start us off. One example that I think pays this off really well. So last summer we launched with Nintendo the Switch 2. I don't know if there are gamers in the audience. My kids.
It was massive.
Okay, so it was a big deal. And so what in brainstorming with them, there was this cultural zeitgeist moment that we believed we were sitting on. And we were thinking about, I don't know if you guys remember midnight openings at Best Buy where you wait around the corner to get the thing. And so we said, should we bring back midnight openings? We wound up doing it across every store in the country. It became the biggest social moment of the year for Best Buy and for the Switch. I won't talk about the results. They were off the charts. They blew through every expectation. We had gaming trucks going. The missed opportunity, because I didn't realize it was going to be this big. But you think about other brands that could have participated in that moment. You think about QSR, you think about Rico's Tacos, but no. You think about all of the ways in which Best Buy can enable culture for a brand that is launching a product. We launch products every week. And so that's sort of a, magic in a bottle moment that we are like, okay, that's the new bar. How do we continue to elevate and do things like that really surprise and delight and break through?
Yeah, I can give you another example of how brands are working with us to build emotional connection, right? So there's like long form, and it doesn't have to just be item and price advertising. Like you can do long form content. We have a whole program happening right now for America 250. So we have this whole program we're doing. It's America's Block Party. It's showing up in stores in 3 divisions. Coca-Cola's involved, Chobani's involved, Kraft's involved. It's in our parking lots. It's like a neighborhood block party with like games and events and that sort of stuff. And that's like bringing brands to life in the local grocery store, right? The center pole of the community around the 250th anniversary. So that's just a way you can sort of bring some emotion into the ad.
Yeah, I thought they gave great examples. I'll just kind of add on, the brand is obviously in control of their story, right? And that storytelling is so important. I think, the way we think about it, because we're operating a network, is how do you tell that story consistently, right? Across the network, but again, meeting the consumer where they are in terms of their historical engagement with that brand, and then being able to show the right personalized message to the consumer that's also contextual. Are they in a streaming environment? Are they in a gaming environment? Are they in a rideshare environment? The message and the content might shift, slightly, but always kind of laddering back to what is that meta story that the brand is trying to do. It's just really about how do you help them activate that in the most meaningful way.
So you guys are making a very good case here for commerce media, whether it's through these great block parties or through various content, through midnight openings. What are some of the challenges with the investment in getting basically like CMO buy-in, CFO buy-in at the brands? Like, why aren't more people?
There's no issues. It's all rainbows and unicorns. I mean, I think we've kind of danced a little bit around it. Maybe this is, not, there are some other panels where like we go hard at like what is the blocker. Standardization is absolutely, I think, necessary. There are 300 versions of, well, there's not us, but there are 300 RMNs out in the market. Everybody has their own version of MMM and incrementality and MTA. And then you look at the client side and they're measuring it in their worlds differently. And so I love that the first chapter of Commerce Media, which Brian, you were a big accelerant of in your former life, was about proving the value of this sector. I don't think there's a question anymore in terms of should we? It's more about how. And it is absolutely about scalability and standardization. And so the next version of this panel needs to be Best Buy, Albertsons, and Mastercard are in a network together where there is common measurement and common standards around incrementality, et cetera. I think that's when the hockey stick takes another leap.
How far away
We're not far.
are we?
I think it's going to happen in the next year.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Lisa is poking at it. We can be hard to work with. So we're the second largest grocer in America, and we only represent 12% of grocery sales, right? So if you're a brand and you care about national sales, there's still a lot of ground you got to cover, right? And so I've got all this great stuff, and it requires effort and work, and like we have to abstract that. We have to make it a lot easier to add more reach, more impact without so much effort.
I think there's a couple things here. You're right, by saying that historically retail media, commerce media has kind of been put into a box, right? Oh, this is for my lower funnel. This is performance budgets, maybe affiliate budgets. And I think there's some work to do, right, to still penetrate, those upper funnel budgets. And so that's one dimension. There's another shift that's taking place in terms of the prioritization around ROI. So while CMOs, of course, right, believe in the importance of brand equity, 84% are now prioritizing ROI as the leading metric for allocation of budgets, right? So there's like a CMO, CFO story happening right now. And so I do really think that the tides are gonna shift, right? I think we'll get kind of more embracement, engagement, of using these channels for not just lower funnel tactics and activities, but for upper funnel as well. And I totally agree with my friends up here on standardization measurement. I do think that if we can unify as an industry to really drive that, I think we can create a better outcome for all.
So in the last 2 minutes here, so tell me what the future of commerce media looks like. We can start with you, Lisa.
I said this when I first stepped into commerce media. If we do our jobs right, you drop the word commerce. And it's just the new way of doing media in every aspect. So that's the future. It becomes mainstream and becomes the new paradigm.
I mean, I can't believe we've gotten this far. Now, I've talked about it, but I think agentic is a big part of our future. So we just announced this week that we've got ads that are showing up in our agentic commerce experience. So you can chat with our bot and help build a grocery basket, and relevant ads are showing up. So that's like agentic commerce. But agentic buying, I think, is also going to be really interesting in the future. So smart buyers can build more tests and segments faster and use our return path to optimize faster. So I think we're all going to learn a lot about MCP servers and AI, APIs and all this sort of stuff. So I think that's going to be a big part of our future.
So I could talk about a lot of things, right? Stitching insights together, closing the loop from an attribution standpoint, of course, reaching consumers with more useful, valuable, additive content. But maybe I would end with this. I think the future is about moments and experiences that are priceless.
Amazing. Thank you all for being here with us today.
Thank you.